We are about halfway through the year, and instead of asking myself, what have I accomplished? I ask myself a very different question. What actually needs to change? And the answer kind of surprised me. So, this kind of goes back several weeks ago, where we all know that the Hubs is on the retirement train, and it's definitely fast approaching. And I realized that in all of that, as a Gen Xer, this is something that was just another thing that was never talked about. We know nothing about. It's not the same as a pension and Social Security down the line, and you're good. And it just works itself out. It's not like that now. There's all these moving parts and knowing which levers to pull when, and it's a lot. So several weeks ago, the Hubs comes to me and asks, did I log into his account? And I told him, yeah. And it was mostly just to get an understanding of where he is because we were getting ready to have that pre-planning meeting. But what I didn't see coming was an actual fight behind that. And it turned out that it wasn't necessarily the money itself or the are we ready or prepared. It was some of his feelings about, did I do enough as a provider, which is totally different than, yes, we have enough. Yes, we're on the right track. Yes, we still have a few years out, but it was, am I being a great provider, which is a totally different conversation. But instead of just recovering from a fight and, you know, of course, being mad at each other, not talking, and the whole thing, and yeah, that happens. And but I realized that I needed to sit down and just kind of look at everything: the money, the debt, the business structure, how I spend my time. I looked at all of it. And in this one day that I decided to do that, I was able to fully map out with real numbers what do things look like, probably for the first time. And I created a better debt payoff plan so that we can actually stick to it this time. And working towards, if his retirement is in 2030, then what do we need to do to be prepared for that when that shows up? And that's what I did in that one day. I was actually able to get rid of $800 in my business just by reshaping the platforms that I use and restructuring things just to make sure that it's running properly and functioning. And that also meant changing the name of the LLC to make everything flow and match. I know it still seems a little messy behind the scenes, but it's working itself out. It's doing its thing. And so when I look at this, the fight really wasn't the problem. It really was the signal that we probably both needed to understand where we were and be able to start to make changes and be more intentional about what we're doing, saving money, spending less, doing all the things that they tell us to do to be ready for retirement, but actually doing it and trying to stick with it for the next 4 to 5 years. So what does a mid-year reset actually look like? And this is more of the practical piece that I kind of took on myself and tried to figure it out, because that's what I do. I figure things out. And so I decided to plan my time very differently because, as you know, I still work full time, and me doing videos, me running 2 businesses at this point is something that I have to strategically schedule my time. And it's not about productivity, it's more about the intention behind what gets my energy and when and how much. The money and debt piece, though, this is really was about the automation of things. Yes, I paid the bills on time. Yes, I did all the things. Yes, we had a plan, but I realized that we lacked automation, and that if we have more automation, then it leaves less room for us to get off task and get off track with what the plan already was in the first place. And so now I'm just not manually doing everything every month. It's more of it's just doing it on its own. I also looked at how am I spending my family time and being more deliberate about what that actually looks like when, either Joe is working or when it's the weekend or vice versa, because we know his schedule shifts more than mine does. And it was just about understanding how can we simplify things, cooking dinner, doing all the things in order to make life work and just function the way that it should and it does. Another thing I looked at is the household task and the upkeep and all the things around that. And it's also about getting the kids to kind of step up to the plate because they are 11 and 13 now, and making sure that they are contributing to their own household and they're being productive in their own household, and giving them also the skills that they need to become functioning adults, because I see way too much in my job. Probably the hubs does too, but I know in the role that I have now, I see so many early something 20-year-olds or super early 30s, and they know shit about being an adult. Nothing. And so I am trying to be intentional about teaching my children to do different and to be ready. Yes, it's hard and it's not necessarily an easy transition, but to be ready to start making that transition, even if it is slowly, even if it is they still are living in our house when they are. But it's about them knowing what they're supposed to do as an adult and giving them the information that we didn't have as Gen Xers, to make sure that they have everything that they need and they understand things. The other thing is, I don't like to set goals, but I definitely prioritize what my intentions are moving forward until 2030. And it's about making small steps towards that ultimate goal of, getting the kids out of high school and letting the hubs retire, helping me get to a place where I can actually retire as well, traveling more, and possibly actually selling our house and moving back out in the country, or whatever we decide that we want to do when that time comes. But it's about setting the intentions and doing the things every day so that we can be ready for that. The other thing I looked at was self-care and things that are non-negotiable. As a projector in human design, I need a ton of rest. I work in spurts, and the rest of the time is rest. And it's really hard to do that when you work full time, but I've found ways to make it work, because if my energy level is not kind of even keel, it's going to be really hard to do things when my energy is like tanked or too low. It's just not going to work very well. The other thing that I kind of put in place was some calendar systems. It's actually being able to use them properly, or use them in a way that it's not just a reward or it's not a requirement, but it's helping me maintain what I put in place and the intentions that I set, and using the calendar in a way for the reminders, for knowing where everything kind of gets plugged in, and it's being intentional again about the calendar system. So it's also about consolidating and your digital space. Like, as you all know, I'm not on social media like that anymore, and there's reasons behind that, and that's for another video. But it's just organizing the digital space to make sure that things are again working and flowing properly as we move towards our intentional goals of 2030. I also started thinking about downsizing. And this one comes back to, are we going to move or not? And moving on land. And what does that look like, to a smaller house, to what what is the plan on that? And in this reset space, it made clear on, okay, if I start working on that now and downsizing intentionally now, that makes whatever that transition is later easier. Working full time with two businesses is not easy, but I am trying to figure out what is actually sustainable, knowing that t-shirt making is not necessarily day to day, in your face. Yes, we would love to help small businesses and small groups or groups to get the needs that they have met, but it's not like it's something that I need to tap into every day, which is great. Me running my counseling supervision side of things of a business has more touch points. And so again, it goes back to what is the schedule that we have in place, what is intentional, what are the things that I need to do, and how do I schedule myself so that I am being sustainable versus what is just because I have to do it. And that's not what, I'm also looked at what does it look like to get better in my married but single era. And some people will be like, well, you have a partner. Yes. But if you know what the term actually means, you would understand that there's women in this world who are married. They're happily married. Sometimes they're not, but they're running the household. They're doing all the things. They have the finances. They have the businesses. They have their own energy to manage. And they learn to do things without waiting on their partner to do things because their partner operates differently. And so I'm learning to tap into what does that look like for me to just do things and not necessarily wait on the hubs, because his energy moves and functions very different than mine. And that if we waited to do that and waited on him, we would never get anything done. Yes, he's a projector too in human design. However, the way his energy flows in that is very different than mine. And so we would never get anything done. I'm just saying. We probably wouldn't. So the other thing that I looked at in this time of reset was releasing things that aren't mine. And I've been really intentional about that, especially in the last, say, 6 or 8 months, and considering some things that are happening behind the scenes at work. And if you listen to my podcast, you probably know what that is. But there's a lot of things that have happened, the emotional and the energetic weight of over-functioning with, people and things around me. And I've really just learned to just let some shit go, just because I can't continue to hold on to things that aren't mine, because that's not helping me get to the goal or to the place where I'm trying to be in the next 5 to 7 years. It's not helping. So I gotta let that go. And so understanding the energetic connection to every part of my life, the money, the relationships, the visibility, the rest, all of it is connected in the way that I move through human design, and then I tap into my personal astrology. Yes, I'm a little woo, of course, but I've understand how when I lean into human design and I lean into my own astrology, it makes things just work, flow, and function way better than I even imagined. And it's given me my own kind of like spiritual space to be in versus what you're taught, the religious aspects of, like, yes, you go to church, you do this, you do that. No, this is a much deeper level of being connected to spirit, source, God, universe, or whatever you want to call it. That's where I'm at. Totally different. So in this moment of a reset, there was some things that unexpectedly kind of came up, and I really wasn't prepared for that. And it really had to make me think about where I am personally, professionally, energetically, physically, like all the things. And in the middle of trying to reset and do all this practical work, I landed on something that I was not expecting to find. I realized that I'll just say upbringing in many ways, and this is not any shot to my parents or grandparents or aunts or uncles. No, this is not. But I realized that there were certain people in my life that no matter what you did, they were there. They praised you. They were happy for you. They were, giving you all the things that you could probably want in childhood to make you feel like you matter and like you're enough. And then there's other people where it was more of a performance. You had to do something in order to get that. And I realized that when some of those people that just freely gave it weren't there anymore, it made it harder to do certain things because you grow up in a space where you had to do it, you had to perform in order to show up and to get the praise or the enoughness or any of that from your people. That's hit kind of hard. And I realized that that was the piece that I was missing all along on why I had a hard time showing up in my business, and why it felt like I would build things and have these great ideas, but then it wouldn't go anywhere. And then I wouldn't be visible and I wouldn't show up because there was a level of me still trying to perform versus and trying to get that praise versus just doing it and then get whatever happens. And as a projector, though, to add just a layer to that, our thing is like bitterness and success. Like we get bitter when we're not recognized, or we can get bitter when we're not recognized. And then, but to know that we're doing well, it's the success that comes behind that. It's the recognition that comes with the success. That's how we know we did well. And it's crazy to say that because I've had a really hard time in wanting to show up on video, but having a really hard time being able to do that all these years. And when I finally just did it, even if it was the very first video a few weeks ago, it was like, oh, that was a cool, great response. Now I kind of have my rhythm and I understand how I need to show up. And it seems easier to do it because I'm not performing, and two, I'm becoming visible so that the right people can recognize me so that way I can get to success. I know that was a more long-winded thing, but that was something that came out of where I was in this reset. And it's crazy because we're halfway through the year and most people are like, oh, let's just finish strong. I'm like, no, how can we just start over and just be better than what we did the first 6 months? So, like I was saying, like I spent my time and my lifetime feeling like, being unseen or discouraged or being judged on my output, and visibility start to really feel dangerous. And that, I think, alone was hurting my business. And I would say that there's a level of that connects back to being married and to my hubs, because I think without him even realizing that he was doing it, because he was dealing with his own stuff and his own emotions, that it triggered mine. And that's something that I feel like we just have to learn to work through. Marriage is not easy. It does what it does. And so we have to work at being better at understanding where everyone is in a particular moment in time. And that's just kind of like what happens. The other piece is that, what I know from the beginning of the year is very different than what I know now. And I think moving forward, it makes a reset a good place to be right now, because now I have no reason to hide. I can just show up as myself, t-shirts and whatever happens, not being fully polished or fully because part of what I need to do is just show up as me, talk about my experiences, and be kind of like live in the moment, because I trust that someone, wherever they are, is going to get what I'm saying. They're going to understand what I'm putting down. And that's just kind of the space that I'm in now. And so I'm kind of excited for continuing to do videos and see where that takes us and takes me, see where it takes our businesses, and just all around, just it's a creative outlet for me, ultimately, is what ends up happening. So this mid-year reset is not about doing more. It's more about getting honest with what is actually working. It's about what needs to change in your life, and what have you been carrying that never was yours to carry in the first place. You know, I'm really intentionally building a different life on purpose, and it's not perfect. It's not all at once, but it's being more intentional about that and the direction that we're going. And if you are a high responsibility helper, you are a therapist, a counselor, same thing, a first responder, fire, police, EMS, an attorney, medical professional, doctors, nurses, like teachers, y'all are responsible for other people's lives in some kind of way. I'm talking to you because I know that you are tired of surviving, and you want to give your best to everyone else and do your job well, but it's really hard to do that sometimes. And so I'm going to encourage you to take this month. We're halfway through the month already, but take this as your sign to do a reset and to really look at the parts of your life that really may need to change or need a tweak, just something. You don't have to do this, wait for January, this new year, new me bullshit. We don't do that over here, but you can start right now, and it's something that you can tap into for yourself. I hope you found today's video helpful, and make sure you share with a friend, you subscribe for more videos, and I'll talk to you next time.